Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. Today is a great day. We have the Larry Roberts in the house, founder and creator of One Big Win podcast. We're into a new brand, but Larry is an OG in the podcast arena. I'm super excited to have a much anticipated conversation with him. It was very serendipitous how we met, which we'll talk about. And then we're going to talk about the power of showing up, because I think the humans that continue to show up are the ones that reap the rewards, foster connections, and the path kind of lays out. I think it's a super, super powerful thing in life. And we're going to unpack that because Larry is a varsity shower-upper, if that's a thing. So without further ado, Larry, welcome to the show. Give us a little 411 on the Larry.
What is happening, everybody? I am Larry Robertson, the host of the One Big Win podcast. Been in the game now for about 5 years, and One Big Win is going to be my third show. First show was just a lot of fun and kind of getting my feet wet in the game. The second show was readily random, and I've been on that, with that brand for about two and a half years, something like that. And that was the brand that I was with when Kristen and I met. And I'm just now, actually, today is the 10th of October that we're recording this, and I'll be going live with the new podcast on 11/1. So I'm pretty excited about that. Very exciting.
And it's so crazy. I stand in very humble waters as far as podcasting. I'm over a year in and learning so much. And I know it will continue to be a learning process. But before I get into Larry's journey, I just want to talk about how we met, because I do think that whatever you believe, universe, God, Madonna, as I always say, looks out. And jumping into the podcast game, I was super raw. One of my other friends is a new podcaster, and she said, come to this event, Podfest. And I'm like, dude, I don't know anyone. I'm barely a podcaster. But I knew just going there, I just had this gut instinct. I'm like, just show up. And ironically, there was another new podcaster that saw something on social media, and she's like, we're doing a meetup, come down. And I went down to the lobby, and there was no chairs by that initial group. So I just happened to sit down next to Larry. And I, of course, had a cup of tequila because it was, 5 o'clock / 10 a.m. somewhere. And we were walking down, and I sat next down to him. And I think within the first 10 words, it was like, hey, I'm Kristen, and hey, Larry. And we were sitting across from two other varsity podcasters, the Pod Sound School. And he's like, yeah, I don't really drink. And I'm like, perfect. Well, my show is called Turmeric and Tequila, and I'm drinking tequila. So it was really funny. But from that initial, random meeting, Larry has involved me in PodMax and Propelify thing going on right now, and just has been incredible as far as introduced me to all these really amazing human beings and people that are really working hard and doing it right in the podcast arena. So it's, like I said, universally looked out, and I felt so blessed to cross paths with Larry. And not only that, I think our personalities really aligned, because by day 2, he was like, thanks for dressing up, and was kind of talking crap and shooting the shit. I'm like, perfect. We're going to get along so great. It's been a really wonderful thing. So anyways, Larry, unpack the background of give us, Larry, personal world, how you ended up in podcasting.
Man, I ended up in podcasting because I was going down a route originally of voice acting. I'd been going to school to be a voice actor, taking an intermediate and advanced class. So I thought I was really a voice actor by this time. I voiced a video game or two that probably sold 2 copies a piece. So I don't know that it even counts. But the thing is, I had a guy that was going, man, you got to listen to this Joe Rogan cat. And as a fight fan, I know who Joe Rogan is. I've known who Joe Rogan is for years and years and years. And I just wasn't interested in hearing his show going on and hearing him talk about smoking weed and this and that. I'm like, man, I did all that back in the day. I don't need to hear about it again. But then I finally broke down and I listened, and I was blown away at the things they were saying. It was I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were dropping bombs. They were making innuendos. They were anything. And it was no holds barred conversations. And it was just great. I kind of have a history of the old mouth getting me in trouble a little bit, because a lot of times there's no filter. And when I saw what they were doing unfiltered, I was just amazed. I was blown away, and I said, "This is something that I got to get into. I got to start doing this right now." And that's when I launched my very first show, and it was very, very similar. It was a comedy-based show, but it was very blue. You know, a lot of profanity, a lot of innuendos, a lot of locker room talk, if you will. It was just a good time. I had a co-host. We were tearing it up. We were rocking and rolling. He ended up going on to do great things in the comedy scene. Right now, he's on tour with Eddie Griffith. He's opening for
Nice.
Eddie, like right today, right now. Well, maybe not now. It's still a little early in the day, but he will be tonight. So it's something cool to see him go off and grow in his arena. And it's also been kind of fun to sit back and see my own growth in this arena. So what I ended up doing was kind of evolving into a show that I wanted to give back a little bit. I wanted to make a contribution. I wanted to do something more than there's only so many, can I say dick jokes?
You can do whatever you want. It's turmeric and tequila, man. Anything you
Okay.
want here.
Well, you can only tell so many dick jokes before, you've told all the dick jokes you can tell. So,
Well, I grew up with 3 younger brothers, right? So, I mean, come at me. Like, what do
yeah.
you got?
Man, there's no telling where we would take it. We had porn stars on. We had a
Oh,
group.
okay.
We had a group called Cream out of Canada. They did a theme song for us. It was, I mean, it was nuts. But it was
No pun intended.
yeah. Well, yeah, that too. So, but we had a blast. But it ran its course, And again, I was at that point where I wanted to do something that had a little more value, that had a little more depth, and I had always used the name Readily Random, dating all the way back to MySpace. I had a blog called Readily Random on MySpace, and for some reason, I thought the name was kind of cool. And I thought, well, I can recycle that and use it as a podcast. So that's what I did. I founded the Readily Random podcast, actually launched it as a business, Readily Random Media LLC, which I still use as my primary business, and went down that path. And it was an ever-evolving path that, I mean, I've had so many different people on the show. I've had Jamie Kennedy, the comedian. I've had Satima Nali, who was a Super Bowl champion with the Patriots. I've had Mark Victor Hansen of Chicken Soup for the Soul, and Mitzi Perdue, who she inherited Perdue Farms. You've probably eaten some of her chicken before.
Probably.
It's just one of those. I just got just this slew of guests that were just tremendous guests, and I had so much fun learning and evolving from them. It ended up kind of going more towards an entrepreneurial type podcast, and that was a ton of fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. However, one of the things that I learned from Readily Random is if you're going to start a podcast, you want that podcast to tell people what that podcast is about. And Readily Random leaves people going, scratching their domes, going, do I want to listen to this? Or what is, I don't even know what it is. So this time, I let Readily Random run its course, and I'm launching One Big Win.
Hey.
We take moments in our lives, put them into motion, and puts us on our path to mastery. So moments, motion, mastery, that's what One Big Win is all about. And that's what we're going to do with it. So I'm very, very excited and happy to be here.
I love it. I'm super excited to see how it transitions. And I think one big lesson for anyone listening, whether you're a podcaster or not, is being open to evolution and constantly learning. And particularly right now, we're in a world where everything's changing. I mean, with COVID and even without COVID, you see how much more our young people are dependent on technology, and businesses are changing and consumers are consuming differently. Like, it's just so important to stay a student of the game. And that's something I liked about getting into podcasting, is like I was learning something all over again. And it's been a minute since I was in that space. And it's that process continues. So that in itself is a skill set. So I think that's a major takeaway. You said you kind of mastered it in different arenas, and yet now here we are taking on a new challenge and dialing in even more. I'm curious to see where turmeric and tequila goes. And I know we had discussed this on my podcast. You're like, what are the challenges with that and niche? And I'm like, listen, as a brand professional, I didn't really know where it was going to stick. I just knew that was such an authentic brand, if you will, namespace, and literally quite, a description of my world. If it stuck, it stuck. If it didn't, but I just cared about authenticity. So ironically, I think maybe as a unique one-off, turmeric and tequila has kind of worked. Every time I wear this shirt, like at the dog park or something else, people are like, I love it. Yeah. Like they get it. They don't even know what it is. They're like, yes, like maybe like turmeric, maybe like tequila. Maybe they just, who knows what, for some reason it makes sense to them. So
Right.
I'm hoping it somehow like sticks in the right way. But if not, it's authentic. So I'm excited to see where One Big Win goes. And with this slew of, really incredible guests that you're getting to come on and that you've done, what are you most looking forward to as you launch One Big Win? Is it the guests? Is it the new conversations? Like what's the exciting point? The most exciting point, I should say.
Straight up winning. That's it. I'm
Hey.
stoked to win. No, I am excited about winning as well. I want the show to be very, very successful, and I'm hopefully putting everything in place to make that happen. But the big thing that I'm really looking forward to is putting more of me out there. In my first show, there was a side of me, which was just my little kid side and having a good time. Readily Random focused on the guests, and the guests made the show. I was using the guests to promote the show. This time, I'm going to have guests as well, but I'm also going to put myself out there. I'm going to introduce the world to Larry. I firmly believe that if anybody has experienced big wins and big losses, I've pretty much run the gamut on both. I mean, it's just one of those situations, man. I'm in my mid 40s. My upbringing was very interesting. High school was definitely different. Everything to me is definitely different, and I seem like a unique cat. So I think what I'll end up doing is sharing a lot of my stories as well, and kind of giving you an insight into just your average everyday cat being me, going for it and realizing, oh, here's an opportunity for me. It's just like starting the podcast itself. I'm seizing a moment, or I'm taking this moment that it was an idea that popped in my head. So I'm going to take that moment. Now I'm going to put it into motion by pushing it out there and going live with a brand new podcast. And doing so is going to continue me not only on the path to my own life mastery, but to podcast mastery as well. Now, something that I'm kind of struggling with, and maybe even you can help, Kristen, is that, I've had a couple people ask me, go, are you sure you want to put mastery at the end of your subtitle? Because isn't that implying that you are a master? And
Yes.
yes, to a degree.
Not to cut you off, but carry on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yes, it is if you reach that point. But mastery in what I'm going to convey is a journey. It's a path. And you're following that path in an effort to realize your mastery in whatever it is that you're doing. Whether it be, I think there's which side is it? Yeah, there's a karate belt back here, black belt back here. Was I a master when I got that black belt? No. Did I start learning more of what really we were doing when I became a black belt? Yes. It wasn't because there was some secret magic techniques. It's because I was maturing in what I was doing. I'd been doing it for long enough to start to understand the concepts and the principles behind karate or whatever style it was that I was training in at the time. And it's the same thing with podcasting or anything else that you do. Your mastery is an evolutionary process that allows you to start understanding the bigger picture. What does it take to go to the next level? And I don't believe you can get there unless you've already been on some of these lower levels. And I don't mean to disrespect my own artwork, but there was times in the first and second podcast where those were steps, those were evolutions. And I think this next evolution is going to be even better. And I'm looking forward to putting myself out there a little bit more.
I love it. And you really touched on a lot of excellent points and deep metaphors for anything you're doing in life. The journey, constantly evolving. Any great athlete, business person, parent, leader knows that if you stand idle, you will be run over. So it's got to be constant evolution and continuous evolution. I think in Japanese, it's called Kaizen, where it's continuous improvement. I always want to go live because I can be like, okay, anyone that knows Kaizen, holler, correct me. But it's this idea of constantly improving. And that is mastery, knowing that once you get to the top, you know that you don't know anything and you keep learning. And on the flip side, embracing being like, ooh, we have ran some laps. We have, done this. And there is an expert title that goes along to it. You so eloquently stated, I had this podcast and then it evolved to this one. Now I've got this new one. Well, that right there displays your experience and your expertise in this constantly evolving, social media, digital podcasting world. That is the mastery, is the constantly evolving open mind to learn and then to, get better and better and better. I really liked that you are embracing, this more vulnerable, raw space and leaning into your own voice, as cliche as that sounds. And you are quite literally a voice master, as you said, you've got specific experience in voiceovers. But when I so often work with like individual brand management, and I touched on this with Josh Carey from PodMax when we did a cast about embracing your voice and really that everybody's an influencer and that how powerful it is and how much a responsibility it is to, as people on the mic, to embrace that responsibility and recognize the messages that we are putting out there. And it's really a challenge to lean into us and be like, oh, wait, am I the influencer? Do I actually have all this great intel that I should be saying it? And is that ego? Like, that's a little icky and uncomfortable. However, when you look at what other influencers are putting out there, and I'm not here to call it the bad, I'm really here to highlight the good, but you can be like, oh, okay, maybe I do know a little something about this. And if these people are talking about these things, well, I actually know that I've spent 10 years, 15 years, 20 years doing this. Maybe I do have something to talk about. And if I don't, it's actually a disservice to the community. So if you can flip your mindset from this is ego, this is weird, I don't know that, I've got kind of this like imposter syndrome going on, to wait a second, look at all this intel that I've learned, look at all this I've had to go through. If this can streamline anyone's process, why would I not be sharing this? Can you tell us, you leaned into the journey. You said you had a unique background. Can you give us, a tidbit of the background, the upbringing? I love the human behind the story outside of the skill set and the experience and the professional angle. Give us a little in-depth view of Larry, the human, young Larry, maybe teen Larry, college Larry, and then Larry now.
Well, it starts off back in 1972, and I was born in a small town called Denison, Texas, and it just happens to be the same town. You can tell I'm from Texas, can't you?
Hey.
It's the same town where Dwight David Eisenhower was born, so that's kind of cool. It's actually his birthplace is just down the street from my grandma's house, so that was always kind of cool. We drive by it literally every time we went to grandma's house, which was every week, multiple times a week. So that's kind of neat. But I was born. Even from day one, I was born with the opportunity to only exist for a short time. I guess that's an opportunity. I was born with a massive birth defect. It was an inverted sternum, and my sternum was concave instead of convex, and it was growing inward while everything on the inside was growing outward. And eventually they were meeting in the middle, and my heart couldn't beat, my lungs couldn't expand, and I was going to check out. So I ended up having life-saving surgery where they went in. I was 4 years old, and they completely reconstructed my chest. They broke my sternum in multiple places. They cut ribs off and put them back together. I mean, they rebuilt everything, and obviously it saved my life. But at the same time, it put me on an interesting path because it literally changed the structure of my body. So as I grew up, I was always super, super skinny, super, super tall, whatnot. Well, super, super is a bit of an exaggeration. For my age, I'll put it that way. And I mean, I was so small and so frail and so narrow. My shoulders aren't very wide because of the way that my ribs are constructed now. It's kind of interesting, kind of gross. So brace yourself. My lungs come up here to my clavicles and go down almost into my hips because they're so long and so narrow. They're just these tubes, basically. And that's because of the way that my chest is structured in a way that was how they had to grow. That was the only place they had to go because I'm kind of wide now, but my structure, the skeleton's not quite wide enough to give me a normal set of lungs. So that left me with about 60% lung capacity. And to this day, that's about what I have, is about 60%. So athletics was always a challenge growing up, yet I still tried to play. I tried going into the military right out of high school, got denied. I still wanted to be, growing up with that type of dark cloud over your head, you can't be that alpha male that you wanted to be. I grew up in the 80s, folks. Alpha males were cool back then, okay? So brace yourselves. I'm going to talk about alpha males a little bit, all right?
All the things. Hit us with it.
Yeah, it's going to be all bad stuff. Yeah, bad from today's perspective, but great in the 80s. So, I always wanted to be that tough guy, and I just couldn't. I wasn't that guy. I mean, I was even put in private school from kindergarten forward to protect me and protect my chest. because especially in the earlier years when it was still relatively unset, it was healed to a certain degree, but it could be injured very, very easily. It could have easily killed me. So they put me in private school just to protect me. So I grew up in private school almost my entire life. I did venture off my 10th grade year to public school, took a couple of ass whoopings and went back to my private school. So that didn't work out too well. And a lot of that was due to the social awkwardness and not knowing how to interact in such a large crowd of peers. I looked at public school kind of like going to prison to a certain degree. You had to be hard, you had to be tough. And I went in as kind of well, definitely a poser, if you would, but I just went in as kind of a thug, trying to be a thug. And when you're 6'3" and about $140, $145, kind of hard to be thuggish. And so I got an attitude adjustment or two before going back to the old private school where I was safe and class president and started on the basketball team and all that good stuff. So that was always a struggle. And I always knew as well, the 80s was the time of ninja movies and Karate Kid, which has made a massive resurgence, which I'm really stoked
Cobra
about.
Kai. Yeah.
So, Karate Kid influenced and ninjas influenced everything that I did. I thought, man, if I knew how to fight, I could be this. I could just whoop ass, and everybody would respect me. And I always wanted to do karate, but my parents never would let me do it until I got a little older. Finally, they gave in and said, "Okay, whatever, man, go do it." So I got into karate. I was in karate for about 25 years, hardcore. Ended up kickboxing, competitively fighting. You go, well, Larry, hold on. You said you had 60% lung capacity. Were you in a disabled division or something? No, I was not. Fought against fully able-bodied individuals with 100% lung capacity. I just had to train my ass off a lot harder than they did to get to the same levels that we were at, and I trained with a lot of high-end fighters that have fought in the UFC. Pete Sprass, a good friend of mine, we grew up in the ranks together. We grew up literally together as children, and he's a UFC legend. But I couldn't go there.
Wait, I gotta ask, was your chest okay in all this? Like, that's really ironic. You
No,
were in all this protective zone, school and attitude, what have you, and then you ended up in fighting. Were your parents terrified?
Yeah, they didn't support it at all. My parents never went to a single fight, and they hated the idea that I would do it. But the thing is I didn't care. I had something to prove to everybody around me, and including me. I wanted to prove to me that I wasn't that soft, broken individual that I've portrayed all those years, or that I was forced to portray, or that I had been straddled with. That was I hated it. I hated being frail. I hated not being able to run 17s in the gym. If you don't know what a 17 is, it's the width of the gym back and forth 17 times. We would run those for training for basketball. I couldn't do those. Couldn't run cross country. I could walk cross country, but and no one takes that into account. You go, look, dude, I've got 60% lung capacity. They don't care. Your friends don't care.
Well,
All they know is, yeah, they don't live it. They don't experience. Oh, just you can do it. You can do it. Come on, you can. No, some bitch, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So it's tough, man. But that was the determination and the reason behind wanting to be the tough guy. And yeah, my chest. I never got hurt badly fighting to my chest. I did get in a street fight once, which I don't condone that. But the guy who was on top of me ran down blows, and he's like, "I'm going to break your chest," So we went to school together. We were friends, but we had a little disagreement. And, well, as usual, I came out on the wrong end of that deal. But then the karate started, and I started coming out on the high end. But that was all I wanted. I can specifically remember one of the moments that it still to this day means so much to me, because, and this talks about that evolutionary process, and it talks about your working towards mastery, because I was just an orange belt, which is the second rank you get. You go white, yellow, orange. So I'm sparring with the black belts. The black belts will spar with the new people just to kind of help them out, and they're not supposed to hit them hard or whatnot. And I'm like, man, the hell with that. This guy right here is the toughest guy in the gym. I want to beat Stacy. So Stacy and I are sparring, and I go at him pretty good, as good as I could. And I hit him with something. I'm probably a sidekick, because I used to hit him with a sidekick quite a bit. And that did nothing but piss him off. So he threw what they call an axe kick, which your leg goes straight up and straight down, and it landed right on the bridge of my nose and just broke my nose. And at that moment, I knew I was beat, right? So I ended up leaning up against the wall and just kind of slumping down, and I just cried and cried and cried. Now, I didn't cry because my nose was broke. I wasn't crying because of the pain. I was crying because of the disappointment, and no matter how hard I tried, I could not beat Stacey Rice. Couldn't do it. Well, and it makes sense that I couldn't do it. He's a tough son of a bitch for starters, and he's been doing karate since he was like 2. So he was a tough guy and very well seasoned. And I had unrealistic expectations. But Stacey ended up respecting me because of the fact that I kept coming back. I kept taking those ass whoopings. I kept fighting as hard as I could. I never quit. And he and I are still great, great friends to this day. And it's just, that type of bond that you create with somebody in that type of environment I can't really relate anything to it because I haven't experienced anything else that feels that way. I have to imagine the military would feel that way. When you're something about blood and sweat and tears. I know it sounds cliche, but it's so true. And violence, when you put all 4 together, it creates a bond for those that have gone through it together. And I can't see it ever being torn apart. It's just such a unique experience. But we're all getting old now, so I got my hobbles. Stacey has his hobbles. He's just happy being a grandpa now, hanging out. Still talks a lot of mad shit, but he's too old to back it up. So don't tell him I said that though. But the thing is, again, it was my journey into self-mastery. And eventually I earned that black belt, and then eventually I earned that second-degree black belt, and I earned another black belt in a different style, and one more black belt just to round out the top 3 in another style. So I just kept training. Training was life, and it was because it made me feel like I was somebody. This sounds Stuart Smiley-ish, but I didn't mind getting up in the morning and looking in the mirror because I was like, I'm this tough karate guy, my attitude really kind of went the other direction in a bad way, which again is a testament to your path to mastery, because I went from being the guy that gets pushed around all the time to, I would say this in clubs. I'm not bragging. This is just how stupid I was. If something happened in the club, because I had my club phase, I'm sure we all did.
I hope so. Everyone needs a club phase.
Oh, most deaf. So if we were in the club and some trash talking started, I would just stop what I'm doing and I'd look them square in the eye and go, I'm going to knock you out if you say another word. And then I'd say, do you understand? And if they didn't say they understood, then I'd ask them again, do you understand? And they 9 times out of 10 back down. I only had to knock somebody out once.
I mean, was this like the 90s?
Yeah, it was the 90s.
Okay, because it's a different day and age now. Like there's bouncers everywhere, but I like it. I think it's an energy.
Oh, this is the greatest part. Okay, this is a bad story, but I love the story because it's just so kind of cool. There was the one time where it didn't work. Right, the one time it didn't work. We were at the country club, and I don't mean like the country club, but golf, but the honky tonk type club.
Nice.
That wasn't my scene at all, But
I just envision like Roadhouse right now.
It is basically, it's basically the double deuce after it's been cleaned up just a little bit. So this one guy that I didn't even know, I was dancing with a group of young ladies and having a great time and just whatever. And he starts calling me these names. They're very homophobic. And I didn't appreciate it even back then. So I told him, hey, man, just chill out. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what is happening. He kept going. He kept going. He kept going. I pulled the whole I'm going to knock you out card. Seemed to work for a second, but I could tell that it wasn't going to work permanently. So I went over to the bouncers, told 2 different bouncers. I said, look, I need you to do me a favor because this guy over here, if he says another word to me, I'm going to knock him out. And they're just like, yeah, whatever, because they're these big muscled up dudes. And I'm still skinny. Never was real muscular, right?
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, just know I told you. And I'm drunk and I'm cocky and stupid. And anyways, he says something else. And sure enough, old Lightning Lair, he struck. Because that was a dumb name that I went by too.
We're going with it. Lightning Larry, additional brand piece here.
Yeah. I went by Sir Cat Daddy and I went by Lightning Larry. So
it's all perfect.
Yeah, so it's all just as dumb. So anyways, I ended up KOing the guy with one shot. And at the time, I also taught cardio kickboxing in every gym in the 2 neighboring towns, Sherman and Denison. And I had 3 gyms under my tutelage where I would go throughout. That's all I did was I taught cardio karate and I taught karate and I trained to fight.
No wonder you were lean, man. Jeez.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Yes.
So I'm sitting there at National Health Studio, which was my favorite of the 3 clubs, doing my cardio class. And I look up, and lo and behold, who just walked into my class but Mr. Shit Talker?
No way. The world is a small place. Lesson
It
number
is
1, y'all.
tiny.
But yes.
Tiny. So I noticed it was him. I just kind of gave him the old super cool what's up nod. He gave me a what's up nod, and everything was kosher from then on. But it was just such a small world. And I acted so stupid and I lashed out violently, which there's no justification for that, especially, I mean, you're just using words. But again, it was a different time as well. But I was an asshole. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I would look for trouble. I wish a son of a gun would say something back then. And I eventually learned my lesson by getting booed out of a gymnasium. We went to a karate tournament in Oklahoma, and in Oklahoma, you can draw a little bit of blood in the black belt division only. They don't disqualify you. In Texas, you get disqualified if you draw any blood whatsoever. You lose.
Okay.
And there was a cat that I got placed up against, and I wasn't his biggest fan, nor was he mine. And we were in the black belt division. We squared off, and he landed this fancy, beautiful jumping, spinning kick like Chuck Norris. I mean, it was just glorious. And he hit me right in the chest. Didn't hurt, but it looked beautiful. And all my boys are ragging on me now. They're on the sidelines going, oh, shit, oh, you know, they're talking all kinds of mad smack. So, of course, I got to get this guy back. So we go back to the line, bow, fight, and I sidestep and I punch him right in the nose and just shatter his nose. Blood goes everywhere. I'm thinking, all right, I win, right? No, this dude's tougher than I thought. He just throws a little Kleenex in his nose, comes back to the line. He wants to keep going. So I'm like, okay. So we went at it again. I essentially did the exact same thing, sidestep, blasted him right in the nose again, and his nose just exploded, and he went down. And then I did the stupid stand over and pulled my fist back like, do something, you know. And at that moment, that was a karate tournament. That wasn't even a fight per se. It was just a little, you know, a tournament. We were fighting, but it's not in a ring, and it's not necessary. It's a different mentality, supposed to be. And everybody in the gym that saw it just instantly turned on me. And they started booing and hissing and calling me names. I could see them in the audience pointing at me and going, yeah, get this guy out of here. Get him out. And I had to drive back to town with my instructor. So not only did I embarrass myself that day, I embarrassed him. So as we're driving back, of course, I get the tongue lashing, and then we get back to the gym, and I get the real lashing because he put an ass whooping on me like you wouldn't believe. But it wasn't that I didn't earn it. And from that day, it wasn't necessarily him whooping me or anything like that. It's just after the after effects of that didn't set well with me. And I started realizing how much of a bad person I really was, and how much I had allowed these techniques and whatnot had gone to my head. And it's something that I always wanted to achieve. And I thought I was there. I was invincible. I didn't care how big they were. Now I wasn't really, but I thought I was up here in my dome. I thought I was invincible, and I would talk smack to anybody. It didn't matter. But it was because my ego got out of control. I lost that path, or I left that path to mastery, and I kind of took a left turn and went to assery because I was just turning completely into an ass. And that realization was really, really powerful. And I've tried to apply that understanding and that knowledge, because that's what that is. You don't gain that without the experience, and it's not just knowing, but it's knowledge that you've learned and you've earned over the years through making mistakes, through picking yourself up and putting yourself back on the path to mastery. And that knowledge has helped me move forward. And it changed the way I do a lot of things in life. And it all leads back to the lesson learned from that one little tournament there. And it's still with me today. And it was 25 years ago, probably. So
Those
Go
are the
ahead.
big. I said those are the big pieces of the puzzle. I mean, there's so many deep metaphors in here about continuously showing up, even getting knocked down, and having to kind of earn respect. And you say bad person, but I would really just say, maybe internally angry, or any young human that's in middle school, high school. Like those are such hard times, anyways. Whether it's a born birth defect, or a learning disability, or maybe you're too tall or too skinny or too something. Those are such hard years to be a really whole human, and really I say no person under 25 is without. Even then, as you get older, you really have to put in work. But you're angry, or you're sad, or you're frustrated, and that comes out and manifests in different ways. But would you say, kind of giving us that journey, and thank you for telling all those stories. I had no idea there was so much fighting going on. You're such a nice guy from what I've seen, so I didn't know you were kicking this much ass, man. Glad I
I've,
didn't talk too much shit.
I've had enough of that. So now I just want to have a good time and laugh and smile and cut up.
Good. There you go. What would you identify as your one big win? Would you say it's your chest and being born the way that you were, because that was such like the kickoff point, or what would be your one big win given us that preview of your journey?
It's interesting because I think, and that was another reason that I plan to put my life out there a little bit more on the forefront of the show, is because my life has multiple big wins. And I know that other people have to experience the same thing. But again, everything in my life is always an extreme. It's either extremely good or it's extremely bad. Growing up, my stepfather was very violent, would beat my ass on the reg, would beat my mom on the reg, tear everything up. We grew up in a trailer. He didn't care. He smoked a lot of weed, which I'm not gonna blame the weed on it, but I don't know. Maybe it was the weed's fault. I don't know, but I just know the guy was a dick. And growing up with him was very, very difficult. And there's definitely a dichotomy there where you grew up in a trailer, but you went to private school. Hard to balance that as well, because do you want to take your private school buddies to your trailer in the trailer park? Do you want to go over to their pool parties in their backyard with all their other rich friends at their big houses? That was always a struggle too. So just a big win, evolving beyond that, evolving and breaking the cycle of the violence was a big win. That's not the end of the story though, man. I think I've told you before that I ended up becoming an alcoholic. Even after the fighting ended up kind of tapering off, had a couple of tragedies in life and turned to the bottle, and the bottle eventually got a hold of me, and it owned me. It completely owned me. And only in one moment of clarity, when I was on the verge of death, literally, did I somehow reach out to a friend and go, bro, get Tracy, get me some help. I'm checking out. And they did. They came in, swooped me up. I went to rehab for 7 weeks and broke that cycle. And I've been sober ever since. So there's another massive, massive win, because I ended up having to go to the hospital. The rehab couldn't even maintain my vitals because I was so off the charts, and had so much alcohol poisoning in me. They sent me to the hospital to detox there for several days before they would even allow me back in to their detox. So it was insane. So that's a big win. I mean, there's just my life is filled with big wins, but again, it's also filled with a lot of big losses. But what do you let control you? What do you let your outcome be? Do you wallow in the losses, or do you wallow in the self-pity and in the time of desperation? Do you just give in, or do you keep fighting? Do you turn that around? Do you take control, and do you come out the other side with your big win? And I personally choose to win. It's something that I've always enjoyed doing. I'm not a big fan of losing, not a big fan of the word no. So I say yes a lot, and I continue to push forward each and every day.
I think that's really well said. And my last podcast was with Justin Balunsat from Podmax, associated with Podmax, the alcoholic entrepreneur podcast. It's new. We talked about addiction and overcoming it, and how that's a lifelong journey. I've mentioned on several casts addiction runs in my family, so I've seen these extremes and how much of it's a consistent choice. I mean, I just have really a hats off for anyone that's faced addiction in any capacity and overcome it, because it's pretty incredible. I love how, it's this constant life skill. Like, it sounds like it was in your blood from day one, that you were, kicked down and then got back up. There's a phenomenal quote by Charles Swindoll that actually I was exposed to my freshman year of college in our athletes class. I think they were giving us easy A's. They had minimal faith apparently. But it was, life is 10% what happens, 90% how you react. And it's so true. but thankfully, you know, I think even that ability to learn or have it in your blood or something where you react positively or you keep showing up or you get back up, and because life's going to continue to kick your ass and put you down, especially if you're out there and you're trying new things, podcasting or walking to a club that's maybe a little bit suspect, you know, you're putting yourself out there, you're going to get knocked down. That's part of it. But getting back up is really hard, but to continue to keep doing that is hard. And that's the practice. And like you said, that's the mastery. That's, you know, the key piece of how we continue on, how we continue to get better, how we continue to evolve. And ideally now, you know, with microphones and this super open freedom platform podcasting, we can present this example for young humans to see, old humans alike or older humans alike, but really our young people to see, like, here's my story. Here's how imperfect and yet perfect it is because of these trials and tribulations that I've had to overcome. And here's a way to approach it, or here's a way to ask for help. Here's a way to kick some dude's ass that's just talking too much shit. We need to, sometimes there is a time for whooping ass. I'm really not here for violence, but sometimes you just have to defend yourself and be like, okay, enough's enough. There are alternative ways, but like I said, you got to know when that line is. Now with, you know, the podcast and you're in this space of sharing your story and being more vulnerable, how therapeutic has that been for you personally? Like, I know we're out here for the audience. We're here to make the world a better place. These are my varsity humans. And how has this been healing or helpful for you personally?
It's been tremendous in both arenas, because that was another one of the driving forces behind starting my first podcast. I wanted that outlet. I wanted some place where I could talk the way Larry talks and not get in trouble, where I can tell the joke that I want to tell and not get in trouble. And when I saw this was a platform to do exactly that, man, I was blown away, and it was tremendous. It was tremendous. I can't stress it enough to have that type of platform. Now, were there repercussions due to some of the content? Sure. You know, some people don't like those types of jokes, right? But again, you got to look back to where I come from. I come from Andrew Dice Clay. I come from the Robin Williams. I come from the greatest comedian of all time, Sam Kinison. I mean, all those guys were my heroes growing up. Heroes. I worshiped them because laughing is great. And there was very little opportunity to laugh when I was at home because Richard was always such a dick. So I loved that stuff, man. And it was great. And to be able to go and emulate it to a certain degree on my own show, man, I looked forward to it every time we had a show. It was tremendous. Now, as I evolved, I did the Readily Random thing, and I started this was post-alcoholism, but all my shows are post-alcohol. But Readily Random was an opportunity for me to kind of give back to the addiction community, if you will, the post-addiction community, or any of those that are struggling with addiction. And that was kind of a subtext of the show when it first started. Matter of fact, I believe my very first guest, she was a recovered addict, and she was tremendous. But I found that to be counterintuitive to my progression, because what I kept doing was I kept reliving these stories of addiction, reliving these moments of rock bottom, these moments of people failing miserably every day of their life. And I think I was still too raw. You know, I was only a couple of years removed from the alcoholism. I think I was still too raw to revisit those stories over and over and over again. So that's why that show started to evolve, to be honest with you. So that was kind of an interesting thing. But all of it has helped. All of it's been tremendously helpful. It's been a tremendous opportunity for self-therapy, right? Or for sharing my story, or more than anything, listening to stories. You know, Readily Random, again, was supported primarily by the guests. I didn't talk a whole lot in that show. Now, over the last probably year, it changed a bit, and I started talking more, but in the early stages of that show, it was just people talking, and I would go, okay, well, tell us more.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us more. And I didn't want to put myself out there, because the only self I was comfortable putting out there was the dirty mouth wannabe comedian guy.
Lightning Larry.
Lightning Larry. That's right. Sir Cat Daddy.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, that was it. But I think I've evolved enough now to tell more about me. And hopefully that's what this next evolution is going to do. And hopefully I can share some of my experiences and show people that, hey, man, you're not the only one on that journey. You're not alone. Everybody fails. It's just whether or not do you pick your shit up and jump back on that path to mastery. And you keep striving for it each and every day until you get that one big win.
Hey, listen to that circle round. So natural, so authentic. It is going to work. It's going to be great. I can't wait to see how it thrives. I love how you have embraced your own journey, embracing voice, being vulnerable, and showing people that you can be all these things. This is the base of, turmeric and tequila, where it's, anti-inflammatory, inflammatory, athlete, wellness. Like, it's these juxtapositions. Though that's humans today. We wear many hats. We are all these things. We are a pack of our experiences that define the way we digest the world to this day. And it's really important for everyone to embrace their voice, because, at the end of the day, yes, we want this to be our professional situation and what it is. And we want to connect with people in a disconnected society. We want to show them, provide some space and grace for everyone to be themselves. Because like you were saying, when you found this platform that provided this freedom for your authentic self, that's magical. That's what life is about. And that's, here at 40 years old, I don't know that I should be talking about what life's about. But up to this point, here's what I can tell you. And if it's worthwhile, you got to enjoy the days that you're here and what's going on, and embrace all the shit with the good, because you wouldn't appreciate the good without all the crap. And it's got to work all together, and let that be what makes you, if that makes any sense, because we are also individual. And I talk about this a lot with the branding situation, particularly when people are trying to build their own brand. I actually really don't like that word, but it is also my profession. So we'll rebrand that at some point. But really embracing these authentic characteristics of yourself, because you can't recreate that. I'm good at what I do. I'm a great creative. I'm great at all these things, blah, blah, blah. But I can't create something better than what is sitting in front of me, whoever I'm talking to, because the collection of experience, knowledge, the way you reacted, the way you showed up sometimes and didn't show up, that's all creating who and what you are. And there are people out there that are experiencing what you're experiencing right now, and your journey can add to their experience now. So it's so great. And I'm excited that you are fully embracing what's going on and bring all this incredible experience to the table that can speak to so many people. And it allows you to be that much more empathetic to people you're talking to. I mean, you have a direct experience in all these diversified situations that allow you to connect with people. You talked about that bond as an athlete, where you go head to head and there's violence and blood and sport and competitiveness. I don't know if I can say violence, but in everything I've competed in, CrossFit, lacrosse, and all my teammates. And I think sports are such a phenomenal solution to learning life skills for our young people, and in particular young women, and confidence, identity. But having that camaraderie and sweating together and, competing together. And when you compete, you're all in, especially as a young human, that's your identity. So when you bleed and compete alongside with somebody, I hear you when you say it's hard to recreate that, but what a phenomenal life experience to feel that human connection and that bond forever. And that's what we need in 2020. So start making friends and go play sports.
I definitely play sports, but I'll tell you this right now. I got hurt more playing soccer than I ever did fighting. Ever. I went to the hospital.
I believe it.
I went to the hospital twice playing soccer because I played like an idiot and a madman. I was run full. I didn't care. Give me a red card. I could care less, but I'm going to kill that guy right there.
Well, I was going to say, were you punching people on the soccer field? Like, were you doing karate on the soccer field?
I wasn't punching people, but I was just nuts. Legs flailing. 145 pounds of legs just flailing around on a soccer field. So, they used to call me Big Bird because my legs were so skinny and my knees were so knobby. They literally looked like a flamingo or something out there playing soccer, but they were going all kinds of different directions.
I love it.
But,
well, you're young and your body's kind of growing into itself anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's crazy. So no basketball, being a tall human?
I did play basketball as well. I started playing basketball my sophomore year because actually my parents wouldn't even let me play sports. They thought they were stupid. And so I didn't play sports as a young kid. So I never had that team mentality. And two, see, I didn't know how to win.
Yeah.
I lost, but I never had the skill sets instilled to me on how to win because I never had those opportunities to play sports on Little League or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Well, but these not to cut you off, but these unintentional competition opportunities, like competing in life, showing up, having to go public to private, like all those losses were ensue to this big win, to quite literally your podcast. It's the stepping stones.
Yep. Most definitely.
Pack a helmet, I guess, is the conclusion.
There you go. Pack a helmet. You never know.
Exactly.
You never know.
Well,
Hey, can I go ahead and plug the website?
Yes. Give me. I got to ask you one more question. Of all of this, if closing it.
Time out.
Yeah.
I got And this is, you'll have to edit this. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
But I got 5 minutes and I have to be on a work phone call.
Oh, I got you. Okay, we'll wrap up right now. Conclusion piece. What would be like your one piece of advice to young humans?
Never stop learning. Look towards those that have done it and use them as an example. Find somebody that you want to be. This is great. And I love this. Gary Dunlap taught me this when I was selling cars for a short time, 3 or 4 years. He said, if you want to get better and you want to be somebody, find somebody that emulates exactly how you want to be and plug your umbilical cord into them.
Love it. Influencer marketing, but pick the right ones. I
completely
agree. All right, hit us with details. Where do we find you? We're excited about the new cast, I shouldn't say upgrade, the rebrand. Where are we at?
All the social media will be at Big Win Pod, BIGWINPOD at Big Win Pod. The website is bigwinpod.com. Head out there right now. Shoot me your email so I can let you know when the show goes live. And I'll also be holding 2 drawings for a brand new Amazon Echo Dot. Who couldn't use another Amazon Dot in there? Alexa, play the Big Win podcast. Do that for me, would you? So, one big win, and we're going to make it happen.
I love it. I appreciate you. I love what you're doing. I can't wait to see where this grows to and what humans you're attracting and coming in. I think it's all going to be incredibly valuable for 2021 moving forward. The world needs it. So keep crushing it, Larry. I appreciate you. I'll see you at something soon. I know this.
Oh, I have no doubt. So thank you so very much for having me on. It was so much fun. I love hanging out with you. You're great. Your energy is unreal. So we have a great time whenever we're together, and I had a great time today. So thank you once again.
My pleasure. Blessings. Good luck with the call, and we'll wrap soon.
See you later.
Thanks, Larry.
Bye. Yeah, I got to get the heck out of here, man.
No, that's okay. Do your thing. It's all good. That was perfect.
It's with my boss, so I can't get that one. So.
Get the paper. Keep the 9 to 5.
Yeah, right on. Hey, I'll talk to you soon, okay?
I'll see you, dude.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.